Welcome to this week's episode of Crypto Calling. Today's guest is Robert Wesley. He's the founder and CEO of the MeProtocol, and I talked to him about how the blockchain can change loyalty reward programs through tokenization. Welcome to this week's episode of the Crypto Calling podcast. Today's guest is Robert Wesley. He's the co-founder of MeProtocol, and I'm very thrilled that he's with us here today. Robert, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Felix. I'm very happy to be here with you.
Before we start off, can you introduce yourself and what you do with MeProtocol and what have you been doing before you started MeProtocol?
Yeah, absolutely. So we founded MeProtocol this year, and MeProtocol is something we're using in order to power loyalty rewards today and preparing for the loyalty universe in the metaverse tomorrow. So I've been working on this project with my co-founder, Paul Oman, who may join this podcast, I think, later on this week. And we're very happy to have incubated this project with the Blockchain Founders Group. So a little bit of how we got here today. So I'm a serial entrepreneur, and I'm based in Vienna, Austria, and I've had a weird sort of founder experience. I first started off in the security space. So I was working for the United Nations, and I was working on counterterrorism issues for the UN. I was an international investigator of illicit trafficking cases of people stealing nuclear material from facilities in the former Soviet Union and trying to sell those to terrorists and criminals across the world. So I was constantly traveling from one country to another, trying to help train and work with security services, police, law enforcement, scientists, and all sorts of government officials, sort of tackle some of today's most pressing international challenges. And sort of throughout the whole process, I was always commissioning software to be developed for me, because I needed specialized tools. So everything from normal data processing to really advanced analytics and intelligence-related software. And I sort of learned everything you're not supposed to do by trying it out in the beginning, everything from how not to do stakeholder elicitation to requirements gathering to commissioning consultants, etc. And then eventually I became really good at it and professionalized my work there. And then I started doing this more of a full-time basis. So after I left the public sector, after more than a decade of service, trying to keep us all safe, I sort of started launching various companies. So in the beginning, it was sort of security analytics and information analysis type of software. Then it was more data intelligence and graph computing software. So this is the stuff that helps you find connections between people, places, and things. Also trying to service governments and trying to help them catch criminals and find terrorists and things like that. And then I've sort of transitioned over time into more artificial intelligence related work and now into the blockchain space. So it's been a very sort of, I guess, different or a circuitous path for me, hooking up in the Blockchain Founders Group. But that's how I got here.
Would you say that dealing or at least trying to catch criminals has any gives you an advantage in any startups that you build afterwards, or is that just a interesting fact about you?
Well, yeah. So I'm first and foremost an analyst. And when you're dealing especially with the counterterrorism or counter-trafficking related investigations, you have very limited amount of information. So you have to analyze the crap out of it to try to figure out what's actually happening. And it's an all source process, which means you're gathering information from every single possible source, everything from corporate filings to political statements from different political figures and companies to economic data. And you're also going out in the field and trying to network into targets to try to figure out where they are and gain their trust and uncover what's really happening. So if you translate that into like a business climate, it's much the same type of process. You're trying to figure out what's going on, what direction things are going on, and how can you exploit the opportunity in that space. And so it's served me very well. that sort of unusual background, but it served me very well in terms of even like customer facing work as well. A lot of the times, like from the customer side, you have to get in, from my background, you have to get into the mindset and the psychology of the people you're trying to analyze. So from customer analysis to segmentation, it's very, very similar work, just a different discipline.
I imagine it to be to a certain degree a pretty rough transition coming from the law enforcement background into an industry like the blockchain, which rightly or wrongly had a reputation at least of being a technology that also criminals used at some point. Did you have any prejudice entering the field, or was that?
No. As an entrepreneur, you're breaking a lot of rules anyway, so it's not
exactly
just having a desire to help people around the world doesn't conflict with the technology choices that you make to get things done. And so blockchain related technologies, for me, like the same approach I had back with working machine learning many years ago. It's all about the technology that you need in order to build the stack that you need in order to take away people's pain, or addressing new opportunities, or solving pain points. So for me, the blockchain was simply a set of technologies that allowed me to service the loyalty space, which is going through a huge transition right now.
Yeah, let's talk about that technology for a second. How did you come up with the idea for MeProtocol, and what kind of a problem does it currently solve?
There's the long story and the short story around that. So the sort of short story is I was looking for a tokenized loyalty solution for a travel company that I was working with. And there wasn't a lot straight out of the box for how do I develop a reward system that's on the blockchain that can be exchangeable for my customers, and that I can easily reward for things such as mentioning our company on Facebook or LinkedIn. I wanted to find a really attractive, very agile, very transferable approach to loyalty, and there just wasn't much on the market straight out of the box. And that's how I kind of took a deep dive into the loyalty space to begin with, and discovered, well, it's not just about tokenization of traditional point systems, like let's say airline miles or hotel points or local pizzeria discounts. It's not about just tokenizing those as assets. It's also about creating a marketplace where people can actually exchange those. It's about providing the opportunity where people can really use those. Because I looked at, as an analyst, of course, my background, you kind of look at what are the key indicators of success there. And I looked at there's a few facts that are really important to understand. So in the loyalty space, if you don't use the loyalty points you've been given, you're 3 times more likely to defect from a brand. And if you think about it, people only use maybe at the most 50% of their loyalty rewards. They forget about or don't even access over 50% of the programs that they have. They don't even realize that they're inscribed in loyalty programs. So that means that those type of loyalty programs are not really working that well, or they're not optimized to take advantage of the money that's left on the table. And if you just sort of think about the scoping of that, there's $180 billion of loyalty rewards out there at any given time. So that's over $90 billion of value that brands are leaving on the table. So whether the program is working well or not, we come with a proposition that we can help you access some of that $90 billion of value that you're leaving on the table. And that's what the tokenization of loyalty rewards does in theory, because tokens can be exchanged. Now, as we know, the exchange of tokens is a bit more complicated than that. So we took a look at the problem and said, it's not just about tokenizing it as an asset, it's about creating the infrastructure and creating a marketplace where they can actually be exchanged. Because if you don't have that, then the whole promise of tokenization of loyalty goes unfulfilled or less than fulfilled there. So that's about how we conceptualize the problem, how we identify what was needed in the market in order to increase the value of tokenized rewards. So that's what we're building. And the MeProtocol itself, there's two elements of this. So first is we are providing a marketplace, and it's called the Me app. And within the Me app, it allows brands to push offers to the holders of their tokens. So one of the key problems in the loyalty space is people forget that they have these points or tokens or loyalty rewards. So you want to know not only that you have them, but you want to always know how you can spend them on. So it's what we call a reverse marketplace. And so that's our Me app. The MeProtocol itself is the facilitation of the exchange of brand tokens. And this is important when you consider the fact that, but it would be great if I could take my pizza points and trade them into airline points, and then with you, Felix, and then you can buy a pizza and I can buy some airline tickets. But the reality is we won't always be able to find another person to swap with. So the protocol actually provides liquidity for these tokens so that they can be exchanged even if there's not a direct counterpart to do a swap with. So these are all innovations on top of blockchain technology that we're bringing forward with the MeProtocol.
What I can see now is the use case for the end consumer. Is this the main target group you thought of in the beginning, or is that, or what's the main target group? Whose pain are you solving primary?
Yeah. So you always want to create as frictionless a solution as possible. In our case, it's two-sided. So it's a marketplace. So it's kind of a B2B2C. So you have two sets of customers there. You have let's say the end user or the consumer that's been given these rewards, and then you have the businesses that are offering them. So you always have to try to make both of these happy. So you create a frictionless process for both, in as much as you can. It's never going to be perfectly frictionless, but you try your best. So for the consumer side, there's no charges directly to them. So we don't charge you to access our app. We don't charge a subscription for being able to use this. And it's just very easy. You can even onboard with traditional points. You don't even need tokens to begin with. So everything is about creating a frictionless process. So you should remember that if you're going to be a new blockchain founders group superstar. Frictionless onboarding, frictionless customer experience. So for the brands themselves, we thought, well, how do we get brands involved with this and get them contributing in the system without having a lot of upfront costs associated with this? And so we charge brands for a couple things in our marketplace. So we charge them for analytics so that they can optimize, they can see how their token is doing. If you think about releasing a token and having it being exchangeable, the brands themselves are nervous in that case because they think, oh, we're going to lose sight of the customer. We don't know what they're going to be doing with this token. So we can provide some unique analytics for them to gain better insight and to optimize their program. So that's one way. The other way is we have a pay-per-click model. So when brands are making offers in our marketplace, saying that for 20 tokens, you can get a hamburger, when a user clicks on that, we charge a fee. So this is very typical performance advertising. So every significant brand already has a budget line for that. For that type of advertising. They already have a spend for it. So we can access that. So that's, again, less friction because they already have a budget line and they don't have to go out and do all sorts of internal changes to workflows to make that happen. But we also want to encourage the exchange and develop liquidity for their tokens. So if you can understand sort of a bit on how this is working, when a brand releases their own, let's say, loyalty rewards token, there's not necessarily any liquidity in the marketplace. So maybe no one's even heard of this or no one wants it. So we have to make the market or help them make the market for that. So what we do is something special. We have our own token called the Me token. And what we do is we exchange that token for the brand's loyalty rewards. So they have our token and we have theirs. And so we use their tokens to make the market, and they pay us in our tokens. So it's kind of like a swap that we do. Their tokens for our tokens, and you pay us in ours. And maybe that sounds kind of convoluted on a podcast, but what it means is there's really very little upfront cost for the brand. So they get to pay the advertising, they get to pay for the analytics, just for swapping and making liquidity for their own tokens. So they get everything without any sort of upfront cost.
Okay.
So that's a way that we have thought about that in a very sophisticated way to encourage brands to sign up with very little limited cost upfront. So that we think that's really cool.
I agree because I can see that there will be a lot of changes coming to the sector. How would you imagine the loyalty programs world, so to speak, in 5 or 10 years compared to now? What is the significant change that guys like you have brought there?
Yeah, so what we're bringing forward is what we're calling consumer-led loyalty. So we're seeing a kind of confluence of various factors here. So if you think about brands these days, there's this move towards a distributed marketing. So they're putting responsibility for marketing on their customers. So they're saying, okay, and this is what the tokenization of loyalty can help with. So saying, if you're a loyal customer and you help us promote our brand, we'll reward you with our tokens. So that's great. So you're turning your customers into ambassadors, you're turning your customers into marketeers for you. You're providing that sort of performance-based distributed marketing system there. So what we can do and what we're moving towards with our approach is creating an interaction or an interface between the brand and the consumer, where the consumer can say, I want to be rewarded in this way for doing this for you. And the brand can say, yes, yes, we want you to, if you promote us, then we'll reward you the way you want to. It also allows the consumer to develop a track record. So this is one of the things we'll be working on as well. So for example, if you can show that you spend $10,000 a year on Rolex watches, then Rolex is probably going to reward you just watches in general. Rolex is going to reward you just for coming to their website and looking at their new watch. Okay, but the current platforms for brand consumer interaction are not structured for that. So it's really difficult to understand and be able to classify that customer that way. So that's what we're doing with our platform. So not only can you collect loyalty rewards, not only can you profit from the collection of loyalty rewards, but you can generate more loyalty rewards by doing little tasks for brands. And so that's part of our incentivization structure within the MeProtocol. And it's actually baked into the protocol.
I found that fascinating because I myself worked in influencer marketing for a while. And back in those days, you always had to find the needle in the haystack, and you could not really, as a brand, you could not really distinguish, all right, which influencer might be cost-effective marketing for me, or who is a good ambassador and stuff like this. And with your solution, there might be just an outcome driven approach, and be like, all right, how much is actually spent. So that's actually very fascinating. I want to shift gears a little bit in terms of what we're going to talk about. You are part of the Superstars program, the BFG Superstars program. How did you get into this, and what has it taught you on your way so far?
Well, I have quite a bit of experience with incubation programs. I've also developed my own for reverse marketplace startups. So I'm pretty well versed in kind of incubation, venture building approaches. And as I was approaching the blockchain space, I had this kind of respect for the value add that they can bring to startups. And since this was my first blockchain venture, although I'm a fairly experienced entrepreneur, started 5 different organizations, I knew the value of like specialized programs. And so I found the Blockchain Founders Group and said, well, okay, I want to really validate this idea in this space with people that know it better than I do. Not the loyalty space,
Right.
but know like the blockchain space better than I do. And that's just simply how I got involved with Blockchain Founders Group. And it turned out to be the best decision I could have made in this case.
Mm-hmm. How would you judge the incubation process? Just the process, like getting structures involved. What helped you the most?
I think what helped the most was in terms of the structure was the weekly check-ins. So Blockchain Founders Group had a series of kind of more standardized workshops or lectures and events and interactions for various things like going to market, for entity structuring, legal and regulatory, etc., which are all beneficial. But then they had the approach of, well, let's look specifically at each individual incubee or each individual superstar in this case. What do they need? How can we help them structure their targets for the next week and the week after? So it was very tailored and it was very individualized, which I appreciated a lot. I think what you definitely don't want in a venture builder or incubator accelerator are these like really standard cookie cutter approaches. I don't feel like they deliver a lot of value. I wouldn't subscribe to one. And going into Blockchain Founders Group, I said, okay, well, I've got a lot of experience. What am I going to expect here from it? And I was very pleasantly surprised by the feedback we were getting. And actually, what was really good about it is because they take a very accelerated approach. So there's a lot of expectation for you to deliver very quickly on targets and deliver very quickly on progress. So it was quite intense, but you kind of need that as well as a founder. I mean, I've never needed a lot of external pressure to perform. I'm always working, but it just helped focus that a little bit more, because as a founder and as a CEO, you're always prioritizing your work, and sometimes you don't get that prioritization exactly right, or it's not totally optimized. So that additional feedback to optimize your prioritization was very useful for us.
Speaking of progress, what's up next? What are the next steps? What can we expect from MePotocol?
Yeah, so right now we're very much heavily focused on community building at the moment and partnerships. So I think one of the key benefits of, let's say, blockchain economic models or blockchain approaches is this development of an ecosystem and flywheels based upon participation of multiple groups. And that's one of the things that attracted me to the sector in the first place. So that's really our focus right now, and especially leveraging partnerships. If you look specifically at the loyalty reward space and the tokenization of those rewards, brands are in various stages of doing that. So we want to leverage partnerships, especially not only to extend out the value of the services we provide, but also to expand the marketplace. So one of the first things we did was we mapped all the potential partners, or as many as we could find for us, all the players that were in this space. And we're in the process now of reaching out to each one of them to discover partnerships, because we need to do this kind of channel sales development with brands. And so that's really sort of a key to us. And it reflects some of my previous experience. Partners are an incredibly valuable asset if they're appropriately developed, not only for sales channels, but also for technology development, co-development. And so that's really critical for us.
All right, exciting. That pretty much wraps up our interview for today. The last major question is, where can we find you? where you can find your work, you personally, what's the best way to interact?
The best way to get in touch with me is right now on LinkedIn, I think, for general inquiries. Do that, and I'll also send you our Discord channel as well. So
Awesome.
If you like Discord, we're pretty much on every channel right now. So come to our server, connect with me on LinkedIn, and I promise I'll answer your request.
All right, we're gonna put all these links in the description below, obviously. Everything that's left for me to do is thank you for your time. I know you guys are very busy lately, and also thank our listeners for giving us their time.
That's great. Felix, thanks for having us. And any listeners out there who have any questions, happy to follow up with you.
All right. With that said, have a great week, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.